Hello, friends and family, and welcome to episode 2 of 10 about Alta Rivers Gilbert-Thornton and her family. Before I get started, a special thank you to the cousins and others who left messages after the first video. It really affirms to me how much she was loved by the family. Also, it reminds me that I am by no means the first person that has searched for her between the year of 1886 when she was orphaned and the time that she became a Thornton. Several of you had some great tips, which I've already taken action on. We'll talk about those tips at the end of this episode. Episode 2 is titled Alta Rivers at Work. Before we get into that, I do want to give you a preview of the episodes to come. I've found many court documents, newspaper articles, and other records that I think will be of interest to the family. This episode, as well as the next one, may be a little bit slow, but they're really important to understanding the future documents that I found. We'll talk about the Gilbert siblings and how I use searching for them as a tool to hopefully learn where she is. Episode 4 and 5 are about Alta Rivers' parents and how she became an orphan. Episode 6 will be about Eliza, her maternal grandmother, who I believe was an important figure in Alta River's life. Then episode 9, we'll talk about her and Curtis's military records, and review some information about their marriage. To recap the first episode, where we found Alta Thornton in the 1920 to 1950 census and learned that her father's name is Samuel Gilbert, according to her death certificate. So now we're looking for any record of her as Alta Gilbert. This is the 1910 Indiana census, specifically for Marion County, Indianapolis. You see in yellow a man named Jacob Holwager. He is the head of the household. It doesn't have the L in here, but I do find future records where the L is there, so I think that was a mistake here. His wife is named Flora, and they've got 2 daughters, Emma and Eva. Also living with them is Alta Gilbert, Jacob's sister-in-law, according to this record, and Flora's sister. The record says that Alta is 23 years old, as this census is taken on April 18th, which is the day before her celebrated birthday. What I find super interesting is that if you read down the row, and you'll see that she's listed as a machine assistant for the industry Chainworks. Now, I have seen many census records, and I can tell you, I don't often see women working outside of the household in this time period. Most often, women are married early and are listed as keeping house, or as in the case here of Flora, there's no occupation listed. So this is truly unique. And when I write a book about Alta Rivers and her life, I will absolutely be including the year 1910. It's just such an important year for her. So I'm going to walk you through where I think she was most likely working. And that would be at Diamond Chain and Manufacturing Company. Based on the information that I found on the census record, her address was 515 Warren Avenue. If you go back and look at the census record, written vertically was Warren Avenue, and beside the household name was 515. So that was their address, and I put that into modern day MapQuest, as well as the location of the Diamond Chain Company. They actually had multiple sites around this time, so I'm not certain exactly which one. But if I had to guess, I would think it is on the Kentucky Avenue location. If you notice here on MapQuest, I did the search by the bike. So you'll see the little bike icon to the right of the directions word. And you'll see by modern day standards, it would have been about 2 miles. And that's going the whole way, obviously, and taking about 16 minutes. So while I cannot prove this is exactly where she worked, I thought it would be interesting to learn a little bit more about the company. Those of you from Indiana, or at least Indianapolis, will likely be familiar with this company. The factory was located where the Hoosier Dome formerly sat. It's changed names several times throughout its history, and in more recent years was relocated to Illinois. But since we are interested in 1910, when Alta Rivers probably worked there, we'll refer to it as Diamond Chain and Manufacturing Company. There's so much room for story building here. This is a time period often referred to as the Gilded Age, where there are some communities that are tremendously wealthy. We think of the Vanderbilts, for example. And on the opposite end, we had a time of growing poverty. And in between was this working class of people who were taking part of the second wave of the Industrial Revolution, driven by steamboats, railways, and increases in manufacturing facilities. So I have found a YouTube video that will give a little bit more color to the story. I'm going to switch to that now. Okay, this is from the video titled Chain Reaction, Arthur Newby and the History of Diamond Chain. It's from Indiana Landmarks, and I'm going to play a few different clips for you.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Jelaine Kane, and yes, I do work at Diamond Chain. I'm a product engineer there. I have been with the company for a little over 17 years now. It's a great company. I call it a tiny little gem of a company. And the whole reason that they started was to keep bicycles in motion, and that was their primary product in the beginning. And for a number of years, we're going to go through a bit of a timeline. We were founded, Diamond Chain, at the time was founded as Indianapolis Chain and Stamping Company. There were 3 founders at the time. We only have a photo of one of them, Mr. Arthur Newby. And there was also Fletcher, who acted as secretary, and Glenn Howe. They founded the business on Christmas Eve of 1890. And here's another picture of the Zigzag Cycling Club. Diamond has always been at the forefront of technology and quality, and those newly developed safety bicycles really changed that technology. The safety bike allowed for cycling to be an appropriate method of transportation for women, and then it became a co-ed sport. Then in 1907, they were still growing, so they required a 4-story addition, and it's where the chains were built until 1918.
Okay. I hope you enjoyed that. This is a slide of 2 of the photos that were in that presentation. The lady in the video that we just watched talked a little bit about how it was socially acceptable for women to ride bicycles. So I would love to find a photo of some women on some bikes. I wonder what the conversation was about women who rode bikes at the time. And even more, I wonder if Alta Rivers herself had a bicycle. Tell me what you all think. Can you imagine her riding a bicycle from 515 Warren Avenue to work on Kentucky Avenue at the Diamond Chain Company? This is another really good website if you're interested in the history. There's some different little nuggets of information that are interesting, but I'm going to go ahead and skip that. On the website that I just referenced is this graphic, and it caught my attention because the mention of school, if you remember on the 1940 census that I shared last episode, we see Alta as having a C4 education. So I need to do more research into this to see if it's possible that she could have received that education as part of her time working in the factory. Just another theory to work with. Here are a few advertisements that I found interesting. The first one here from Indianapolis News, it says wanted girls over 17 of age, light, clean, steady employment, good wages. Inquire at Diamond Chain and Manufacturing Company, and it gives the address on Georgia Street. Lastly, here's another photo I found from Indiana Historical Society. If you go onto their website, they've got a treasure trove of information and documents about this factory, including photos. Going back to our timeline, we can fill in one of the missing pieces. So she was absolutely in Indianapolis in 1910. Most of episode 9 will be dedicated to Curtis, but in 1910, he was at Fort McKenzie in Sheridan, Wyoming. It's a little unclear if he would have known Alta Rivers yet, but I can tell you that one of her granddaughters sent me a message last summer saying that Alta lived in an orphanage in Indianapolis. So that confirms what one of you have said. And according to this granddaughter, Curtis had sent a letter with no address, just a name, and she received it. The letter, according to the granddaughter, said that he had written that he had something important to talk to her about when he got home. So it's very likely that he did know her before he returned, but I'm pretty confident that they were not dating. We'll talk more about that in future episodes. And speaking of family tips, I thought I'd end the episode by sharing some of the nuggets that I learned after posting the last video. Where was Alta Rivers Gilbert? Some tips from cousins. We've got Susie and Susie. According to one of the Susies, they had extensively searched Jefferson and Switzerland County records. According to them, Switzerland County had no known orphanage, but Jefferson County did. It is possible that she attended Lower Seminary Public School on Ferry Street, which is no longer there. Jody believed that Alta was at a Catholic orphanage in Indianapolis, and Karen believed that Alta was at an orphanage in Indianapolis as well. So I find it interesting that these are granddaughters, great granddaughters from different descendants, and they've got that common thread that Alta was in an orphanage, and several of them believe it to be in Indianapolis. Based on Jody's tip, I have sent a message to the archives office at Indianapolis Archdiocese, so I'll let you know if I learn anything. I should add here to remember the family narrative about Alta's identity. In this time period, orphanages were highly segregated. So if she was seen as Native or as having any type of mixed race ancestry, it is highly probable that she would have been sent to a specific place for children of the same identity. The same can be said for religious affiliations. There were orphanages specifically for Methodists or Presbyterian or Catholics. According to one Indiana historian whose YouTube video I watched, even the KKK had their own orphanage. Also, I read a very interesting book called The Orphan Trains. I've got it right here. Hopefully, you can see that. And I learned that as a general rule, white and immigrant children living in urban areas were being quote unquote placed out to rural communities in the West, like Kansas. On the other hand, indigenous children were usually kept at orphanages so that they could be assimilated into white society. So, all of that to say that her identity would have serious consequences for what happened to her when she was taken from her home. Remember, it was her mother that passed. Her father is still alive, so she would technically be considered a half orphan. Most likely, she would have been taken because he could not afford to care for all the children. It would really help to find court records of that, but I don't think we will find those. But also, where we find her, if we ever do find her, will tell us a lot about her identity. So it's really important to remember that. I think it's important to be sensitive when we're talking about orphanages, boarding schools, foster care placement. All of that would have really mattered at this time period. So, in case all of this sparks renewed interest, I'll share where I have looked for her, starting with the court records here. Last year, I hired a young man who is really good at finding records, and he developed this list to show me where he searched. So, Switzerland, Jefferson, Ripley, Marion, Ohio, and Dearborn counties in Indiana. Also, Johnson County, but you see the notes here that he felt that that might be worth searching again. We also looked in Kentucky counties of Kenton, Carroll, Gallatin, and Boone, as well as Cincinnati, Ohio, and found no records there. I did search also on the Indiana Archives and Records Administration. They've got records for several state run institutions, the Indiana Soldier and Sailors Home, and there's another one that I can't recall off the top of my head. And I did have a hit for an Agnes Gilbert. So when I'm searching online trees on Ancestry, there are a few that have her name listed as Agnes. Now, they are usually very distant related. So they are usually the descendant of one of her siblings and doesn't have all of the documentation backed up. So I don't think her name was Agnes. Everything that we've seen so far has her listed as Alta. However, when I am searching the records, I do always look for an Agnes just in case. So, like I said, I did find these records here, and I can definitively say that this was not a match. If the tip about her being in a Catholic orphanage were true, I could see maybe that they could have given her a Christian name of Agnes, but Alta was her birth name. I don't know. I don't know how that works and how that worked at that time. But just to cover my basis, I do always search for that. And then also just wanted to let you know that I did contact the Indiana Historical Society last fall. They hold the records for the Indiana Orphans Asylum, and they didn't find a match either. I did ask them if their search included the Indiana Asylum for Friendless Colored Children, which is associated with the Orphans Asylum, and didn't hear back. So I do think it's worth revisiting that. So the search continues, but hopefully we'll find some other things in the place of that. I want to thank everybody again for watching and for sending me your nuggets of information. This concludes the second episode. To recap where we are now that we have found Alta Gilbert, we think that she was most likely working at Diamond Chain Company, though we don't have definitive proof. And in the next episode, we'll continue looking for Alta earlier than that in the 1900 census. And to do that, we need to track her siblings to see where they were in 1900s. Remember, they were orphaned too. So it'll be a census heavy episode, but again, it's foundation to understanding future episodes, and it's really the only connection we've got between Alta and her siblings. So please continue to send me your tips or even your thoughts, your questions, your speculations. I'm happy to hear those too, and I will see you next time.